I always thought being the responsible son would pay off somehow. For 15 years, I helped my parents with bills, mortgage payments, and medical expenses, while my younger brother, Adam, barely contributed. Then I accidentally found their will while organizing Dad's office. Everything was going to Adam. Every asset, property, and heirloom. When confronted, they said Adam needed more help in life than me, so I stopped paying their bills. A month later, Mom texted, "The mortgage is due." No greeting, no small talk. I simply replied, "Ask Adam. He is getting the house." Before I continue my story, where are you watching from today? If you have ever dealt with family betrayal, hit that like button and subscribe to hear how I reclaimed my self-respect and found peace despite being the forgotten son. Growing up in Oak Ridge, a quiet suburb just outside Milwaukee, I was the typical firstborn son, always striving to make my parents proud. Our family was solidly middle class. Dad worked as a mechanical engineer at a local manufacturing plant, while Mom taught third grade at Oak Ridge Elementary. From an early age, there was a clear difference in how they treated me versus my brother Adam, who came along 3 years after me. I can remember countless afternoons sitting at the kitchen table meticulously working through math problems or science projects, hoping for even a fraction of the praise Adam would receive for simply completing basic chores. If I brought home straight, as my parents would nod approvingly and say, "That is what we expect from you, Brett." But when Adam managed to pull a B-, after nearly failing, the celebration would last for days. Despite the obvious favoritism, I pushed myself through high school, earning a partial scholarship to the University of Wisconsin for computer science. My parents contributed minimally to my education, explaining that I was capable enough to figure it out myself. Meanwhile, they fully funded Adam through 3 different majors at a private college before he finally settled on communications, graduating with mediocre grades after 6 years. After college, I landed a solid position at a software development company in Milwaukee. I worked hard, earned promotions, and started building my own life. Then everything changed when Dad had his first heart attack at 58. The medical bills piled up quickly, and their insurance covered far less than expected. Without hesitation, I stepped in to help. What began as temporary assistance soon became a regular arrangement. Every month, I would transfer $2,000 to cover their mortgage. I paid for medications, specialists, and even routine expenses like utilities. My parents never explicitly asked me to take on this burden, but they readily accepted my help as if it were simply my duty as their son. Adam, meanwhile, moved to Chicago and worked sporadically in marketing. He visited for major holidays, bringing token gifts, but never once offering financial support. If I ever mentioned the strain of covering our parents' expenses, Mom would quickly change the subject or remind me that Adam was still finding his path. It was frustrating, but I convinced myself that by helping, I was finally earning the approval I had craved since childhood. The financial responsibility took a real toll on my life. At 32, while my colleagues were buying homes and investing for retirement, I was living in a modest apartment, carefully budgeting to ensure I could cover both my expenses and my parents' needs. My girlfriend Maria, a thoughtful and pragmatic pediatric nurse I had been dating for 3 years, often expressed concern about the arrangement. Why do they never ask Adam to contribute anything? She asked one evening after I canceled our weekend getaway, because Dad needed an unexpected procedure. "It is always you, Brett. Do they even appreciate what you are doing?" "I want to believe they do," I replied, though doubt had been growing in my mind. The monthly budget meetings at my parents' house became a dreaded routine. I would sit at the dining room table with spreadsheets explaining where the money was going and offering suggestions for reducing expenses. Adam was never present for these discussions, though occasionally he would call during them, and my parents would eagerly put him on speaker so we could all hear about his latest adventures. Looking back, there were warning signs I chose to ignore. Despite claiming financial hardship, my parents somehow managed to send Adam an expensive watch for his birthday and funded his 2-week trip to Europe for a friend's wedding. When I gently questioned these expenditures, Mom would get defensive. "Adam needs these experiences for his career networking," she would say, or "Adam works so hard he deserves a nice gift." Maria became increasingly vocal about her concerns. "Your parents are taking advantage of you," she told me one night. after I spent hours helping them dispute medical charges. They treat you like an ATM, not a son. You need to establish some boundaries. I knew she was right, but years of conditioning had made it difficult for me to set limits with my parents. Their approval still meant everything to me, even as I approached my mid-30s, and so the pattern continued until that fateful day when everything changed. It happened 6 months ago during one of Dad's recovery periods after a minor procedure. I had taken a rare day off work to help organize his home office, which had become cluttered with medical bills and insurance paperwork. My parents had stepped out to a doctor's appointment, leaving me alone in the house. As I sorted through a stack of documents in his desk drawer, I noticed a folder labeled Estate Planning. I had been encouraging my parents to get their affairs in order for years, offering to connect them with my financial advisor, so I was actually pleased to see they had taken initiative. Without thinking much of it, I opened the folder expecting to find standard insurance documents and perhaps a basic will. What I found instead shattered my world. The will, updated just 3 months prior, was explicit. Upon their passing, the family home, all financial accounts, family heirlooms, and even my grandmother's antique jewelry collection that Mom had always promised would be divided between future daughters-in-law, was all designated to go to Adam. My name appeared only once in the 20-page document in a line stating, "To our son Brett, who has been financially independent, we leave our blessing and fond memories." My hands trembled as I read and reread the document, convinced I must be misinterpreting something. But the language was clear and unambiguous. After 15 years of supporting them, sacrificing my own financial security and future, I had been effectively written out of their legacy. When my parents returned home, I was sitting in the living room, the will on the coffee table before me. Mom saw it first, her eyes widening in recognition. "Brett, why are you going through private papers?" Dad demanded, his face flushing with anger rather than shame. "I needed to organize your office," I said, my voice unnaturally calm despite the storm raging inside me. "I found your will." "Were you ever going to tell me?" Mom sat down heavily, her hand fluttering to her throat. "We did not want to upset you," she said softly. Dad remained, standing, arms crossed defensively. "It is our decision to make. Adam needs more security in life than you do. You have always been the successful one, the independent one. So this is my punishment. For being responsible, for helping you all these years," I asked, still struggling to comprehend their reasoning. "Do not be dramatic," Brett, Dad said dismissively. "We raised you to stand on your own 2 feet, and you have. Be proud of that. Adam has always needed more support. And what about all the money I have given you? The thousands of dollars every month for the mortgage, the medical bills, the car repairs." "That is different," Mom interjected. "That is family, helping family. This is about what happens when we are gone." I left their house that day in a daze, barely remembering the drive home. Sitting in my car in the parking lot of my apartment building, the full weight of their betrayal finally hit me. I broke down sobbing uncontrollably for what felt like hours. When I finally composed myself enough to call Maria, my voice was raw and unfamiliar. "They left everything to Adam." I told her the words, still not feeling real. 15 years of helping them, and they left everything to him. Her outrage on my behalf was both validating and comforting. That night, as I lay sleepless in bed, replaying every conversation, every sacrifice, every moment, I had deluded myself into thinking I was finally earning their love. I felt something shift inside me. The pain was evolving into something else, something harder and more resolute. The next few weeks were a blur of emotional processing. I struggled to focus at work, making uncharacteristic errors that prompted concerned inquiries from my team lead. I started seeing Dr. Lewis, a therapist Maria recommended, who helped me understand that my parents' behavior was not a reflection of my worth but of their own flawed perspectives. My best friend Jackson was less measured in his response when I told him over beers. "Those ungrateful users," he exploded, slamming his glass down so hard that nearby patrons turned to stare. "You need to cut them off completely, Brett. They do not deserve another penny from you." A colleague named Susan shared that she had experienced something similar with her own family. She told me how establishing firm boundaries had been painful but ultimately liberating. Her words stayed with me. "Your worth is not determined by how much you give or how much you sacrifice. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to walk away from those who cannot see your value." Gradually, the fog of hurt began to clear, replaced by a growing certainty about what I needed to do. With Maria's support, I created a detailed plan to extricate myself from my parents' financial affairs. I compiled documentation of every payment I had made over the years, totaling well over $100,000. I contacted their mortgage company to remove my name as an authorized payer. I canceled the joint credit card I had maintained for their medical expenses. Before implementing these changes, I made one final attempt at honest conversation. I invited my parents to dinner at their favorite restaurant, hoping the public setting might temper their reactions. I cannot continue to support you financially while being excluded from your estate planning, I explained calmly after we had ordered. It feels deeply unfair and hurtful. Mom immediately teared up her go-to response when confronted. Dad's face hardened into the dismissive expression I knew too well. "So this is about money after all," he said coldly. "We always thought you helped because you cared, not because you expected something in return." His deliberate mischaracterization stung, but I was prepared for it. This is about respect and acknowledgement, not inheritance. I have put my own financial future on hold to help you without complaint for 15 years. Finding out you have deliberately excluded me from your will feels like a statement that my contributions have meant nothing. We raised you, fed you, clothed, you put a roof over your head. Mom interjected, reciting the litany I had heard countless times. Yes, you did the basic duties of parents, I acknowledged. And I have gone far beyond the duties of a son. I am not asking for everything. I am asking for acknowledgement, that I am also your child, that my support has mattered. They were unmoved. Dad suggested I was being manipulated by Maria, while Mom implied that real love came without expectations. When they called Adam during dinner to involve him in the conversation, I knew further discussion was pointless. I paid the bill, said a polite goodbye, and walked out of the restaurant with a strange sense of lightness, as if I had finally put down a burden I had carried for too long. The first week after I stopped financial support was surprisingly quiet. I half expected a barrage of calls and messages, but there was silence from my parents' house. This false calm lasted precisely until the first bills came due. It started with a text from Dad. "Your mother and I are disappointed in your attitude. We need to discuss the utilities payment." I did not respond. End of 7T. You mother and I. End of UY. We may. End of 7. We may. Traff. It did not respond. 2 days later, Mom called, leaving a voicemail dripping with passive aggression. "Brett, honey, I know you are going through something right now, but the power company does not care about family disagreements. Call me back." Again, I maintained my silence, though each message was like picking at a wound that had barely begun to heal. By the end of that first week, the tone had shifted from guilt-inducing to openly hostile. "After everything we have done for you, this is how you repay us," Dad thundered in a voicemail that I listened to with the phone held away from my ear. "You have always been selfish, always thinking about yourself first." That accusation from the man who had happily accepted my financial support for years while planning to leave me, nothing was the final confirmation that I had made the right decision. The extended family soon became involved. Aunt Patricia called to tell me how disappointed she was in my behavior. Uncle Robert sent a lengthy email explaining family duty and obligation. My cousin Tyler, who had never bothered to stay in touch, otherwise suddenly found time to message me on social media. "Dude, whatever your issue is, you cannot just abandon your parents like this." None of them knew about the will. None of them knew about the years of financial support I had provided. In the narrative my parents had created, I was simply an ungrateful son who had abruptly abandoned his responsibilities for no good reason. The most surprising response came from Adam. A week after my conversation with my parents, he sent me a private text. "Just heard what happened. Did not know you were paying their bills all this time. Never knew about the will either. That is messed up, bro." His apparent ignorance offered small comfort. Would he refuse the inheritance now that he knew? Would he step up to help them financially? The answer came a few days later, when Mom proudly told me during one of her guilt trips that Adam had sent them $200 to help with groceries. $200 a token gesture compared to the thousands I had provided monthly. And yet she spoke of it as if he had moved mountains. Maria became my rock during this turbulent period. She defended me fiercely when mutual friends questioned my decision, celebrated small victories in my journey toward establishing boundaries, and held me through nights when doubt and ingrained guilt threatened to overwhelm my resolve. My work performance improved as I redirected the energy previously spent on managing my parents' finances. I received a promotion and significant raise, ironically increasing my financial security, just as I stopped depleting my resources for my parents' benefit. For 28 days I maintained my position despite escalating pressure from my parents and extended family. Then on a Tuesday morning, exactly 1 month after I had stopped payments, a text arrived from Mom. The mortgage is due. No greeting. No acknowledgement of the conflict between us. No acceptance of their role in damaging our relationship. Just a demand disguised as a crisis announcement, as if nothing had changed. As if I would simply fall back into my assigned role at the push of a button. I stared at those 4 words for a long time, feeling a complex mix of emotions. Anger at the entitlement. Sadness at the transactional nature of our relationship. But mostly a calm certainty that I would not be manipulated again. After careful consideration, I typed my reply. Ask Adam. He is getting the house. Then I blocked their numbers for 72 hours to give myself space to process the inevitable fallout. When I unblocked them, I had 17 missed calls, 32 text messages, and 5 voicemails escalating from outrage to panic. The mortgage company had called them about the missed payment. Late fees were accruing. Their credit score would be impacted. In none of these messages was there an apology or acknowledgement of the real issue between us. 2 days later, Dad sent an email with the subject line, "You are no longer our son." The body contained a single sentence, "If this is how you treat family, then you are not part of ours anymore." It was meant to devastate me, this ultimate rejection. Instead, I felt an odd sense of clarity. They had finally stated explicitly what had been implicit for years. Conditional love, based on what I could provide, not who I was. Adam called me that evening, sounding stressed and overwhelmed. "They expect me to take over all the payments now," he said. "I cannot afford that on my salary." What am I supposed to do? The same thing I did for 15 years, I thought, but did not say. Instead, I told him, "That is between you and them. I am done being their financial plan." He was silent for a moment. "I always thought you helped. Because you wanted to," he finally said. "I never realized they were pressuring you." "They were not," I admitted. "That is the sad part. I wanted to help. I just never realized that no matter what I gave, it would never be enough to make them see me as equal to you." "Brett, that is not fair," he protested weakly, but I could hear the uncertainty in his voice. "Ask them to show you the will I suggested. Then decide for yourself what is fair." For the next several weeks, a strange stalemate ensued. My parents cycled through different tactics. Dad threatened legal action, claiming I had made promises that constituted a contract. Mom tried tearful reconciliation without addressing the core issues. They enlisted family members to pressure me. Through it all, I maintained my boundaries, forwarding Dad's legal threats to my attorney and responding to emotional manipulation with brief, factual statements. 3 months into this new reality, something shifted. Perhaps it was the mounting financial pressure, or Adam's reluctance to become their new support system, or simply the realization that their usual tactics were not working. Whatever the cause, I received an email from Dad with an unexpected tone. "We need to talk," he wrote. No accusations, no demands. Just a simple statement that acknowledged, perhaps for the first time, that dialogue rather than dictation was necessary. We met at a neutral location, a quiet cafe, midway between our homes. Dad arrived first, looking older and more tired than I remembered. Mom came 10 minutes later, her usual perfect appearance slightly frayed at the edges. "This situation cannot continue," Dad began without preamble. We have fallen behind on several payments. I nodded but said nothing, waiting. Mom fidgeted with her napkin. We may have been unfair in our estate planning, she admitted reluctantly. We never meant for you to find out that way. It was far from the genuine apology I deserved, but it was the first acknowledgement that they had done something hurtful. We are willing to revise the will Dad offered. A 50-50 split between you and Adam, provided you resume financial support. The conditional nature of the offer said everything about their fundamental misunderstanding of the problem. I am not interested in negotiating for basic recognition as your son, I replied calmly. This was never about the inheritance itself. It was about what the will represented. Your view of me as nothing more than a financial resource. Their discomfort was palpable. This rift has affected the whole family, Mom said. Your aunts and uncles, your cousins, everyone is upset. Because you have told them a story where I am the villain, I pointed out. Have you told anyone that I supported you financially for 15 years? That I found out you had written me out of your will entirely? Their silence was answer enough. I would like to try family therapy, I said, surprising even myself with the suggestion. If you genuinely want to repair our relationship, not just your finances, I am willing to work with a professional mediator. To my even greater surprise, they agreed, though. Dad grumbled about the additional expense. 2 weeks later, we sat in Dr. Warner's office for our first session. Adam joined by video call from Chicago. Those initial sessions were painful and raw. Years of unspoken resentments surfaced. Dad stormed out twice. Mom cried frequently. Adam, seeing the full dynamic play out, seemed increasingly uncomfortable with his role as the favored child. You never asked me if I wanted everything, he told our parents during a particularly honest session. I always assumed Brett would get half. It feels wrong to benefit from his years of supporting you. It took 6 months of bi-weekly sessions before real progress emerged. During that time, my own life flourished in unexpected ways. The money previously dedicated to my parents' needs became the down payment on a small but charming house that Maria and I purchased together. After helping me work through my family issues, she had accepted my proposal, and we were planning a small wedding for the following spring. My promotion came with increased responsibilities, but also greater satisfaction. I developed a mentorship program for junior developers that became a model for other departments. For the first time in years, I took a real vacation, spending 2 weeks exploring the Pacific Northwest with Maria, my phone often left untouched in our rental cabin. Gradually, a new family dynamic began to take shape. My parents took responsibility for their financial situation, selling their oversized house for a manageable condo and creating a realistic budget that did not depend on my support. Dad found part-time consulting work that utilized his engineering experience. Mom started tutoring to supplement their income. Adam and I developed a relationship independent of our parents, discovering common interests and perspectives we had never explored as children, constantly pitted against each other. He admitted his own discomfort with the favoritism, confessing that it had created pressure and expectations that had contributed to his directionless years after college. Most significantly, my parents began to see me as a person, not just a provider. They expressed interest in my work, my relationship, my hobbies. Real interest, not the perfunctory questions that had previously served as preludes to financial discussions. They invited Maria and me to dinner without any hidden agenda of presenting a bill at the end. The revised will, when they finally showed it to Adam and me, was indeed equal, but by then it had become largely symbolic. The inheritance itself no longer mattered to me. What mattered was the recognition that I was valued for who I was, not what I could provide. Last weekend, we celebrated Thanksgiving, together, the first holiday in 2 years, without tension simmering beneath the surface. As I looked around the table at my parents, Adam, Maria, and a few close friends we had invited, I realized that I had gained something far more valuable than any inheritance, far more precious than any property or possession. I had gained self-respect, healthy boundaries, and relationships built on mutual respect, rather than obligation or manipulation. Life is too short to be anyone's ATM, even your parents'. If my story resonates with you, remember that helping family is beautiful, but not at the cost of your own worth and dignity. Have you ever had to establish difficult boundaries with loved ones? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story helped you see your own situation more clearly, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply reply, "Ask Adam." He is getting the house.